3 members of Mexico's security forces have died and 18 people have been admitted to hospital in the northwestern state of Sinaloa.
Everyone knows about the infamous drug dealer, El Chapo. But who were the ones who stood closest behind him? What were some of the most shocking and reviled activities carried out by the Guzman family? Who thought they were worthy to fill the mythic shoes of their jefe? Today's tale begins with a whisper from a disowned branch on the Guzman family tree, one that had been around since the beginning, but was hushed away to secrecy for their own safety. Rosa Isela Guzman Ortiz was born in 1979 in Zapopan, Sinaloa, the product of an affair. While her status as the oldest child of El Chapo is wildly debated, her mother is confirmed to be Maria Luisa Ortiz Vergara, a known girlfriend of the man through the mid to late 70s. After her father cut off contact to protect the girl and her mother from his deadly trade, her mother married another man who could help raise her. Unfortunately, this man was abusive to both her and her mother, and at the age of 10, Rosa decided she had enough and attempted to kill the man with a pair of scissors. Her stepfather was hospitalized, and she was sent to a juvenile detention center until the age of 14. When she was released, she began dating a young man by the name of Vicente Zambara Niebla, son of Ishmael Zambara, the right hand of the Sinaloa cartel. Before long, the pair was expecting a child. And in their frustration, both fathers would force the two to marry, so the child was not born out of wedlock. El Chapo decided to send his daughter across the border to ensure his first grandchild had an American citizenship. His first attempt to get her on a plane was halted in 1993, however, when the Arellano family botched the attempt to assassinate El Chapo at Guadalajara International Airport and instead murdered Cardinal Juan Jesus Posadas Ocampo. When she finally did make it to the U.S., she was sent to live with her aunt in California. After the birth of her son named Archivaldo, after his grandfather, Rosa was provided with large sums of money by her father in order to provide care for the child while she pursued an education. She studied computer science at the University of Phoenix and cosmetology at the Maranello Schools of Beauty in Riverside, earning herself the nickname La Barbie. After earning her degrees, she used money from her father to open several businesses, including hair salons, car washes, and cafes. Soon, though, this choice came back to bite her. It was suspected by the FBI that she was laundering money for the cartel, and in 2001, she was briefly detained and held on a $50,000 bond. While no illegitimacy could be found, her companies are no longer officially under her ownership. In 2015, while on the run from authorities, El Chapo visited Rosa twice in California to profess to her that all was not well in Sinaloa. Conflicts in La Paz between his brother and his sons were growing increasingly bloody, and his right hand, Ishmael Zambara, had stepped in to intervene. But this only made things more unsteady as a splinter faction took to the streets in the name of his lieutenant, Damaso Lopez Nunez. He could no longer contain the bloodshed and internal disputes within the organization he himself created. Operational oversight of La Paz and all of Baja California Sur had previously been given to Damaso Lopez Nunez for years of loyal service after first helping El Chapo escape prison in 2001. Ishmael Zambara had been operating here arm in arm with Lopez Nunez for nearly a decade, bolstering each other's security and influence while pruning back Beltran Leyva influence. When Ivan Guzman Loera and his brother Ovidio, known together as Los Chapitos, began constructing their own operations in the area. All of the older, more experienced narcos grew disheartened at the prospects they offered. At the core of this new conflict was Aureliano Guzman Loera, known as El Guano. He was El Chapo's older brother and lead distributor for Sinaloa's meth and fentanyl rackets. When news came that El Chapo would be succeeding the figurative throne to his son, Ivan, El Guano aggressively disputed the decision and began encroaching on his nephew's own rackets in La Paz. The boy was known to be brash and hot-headed, shaking the status quo with waves of terror wherever they did business. So when El Guano contested his brother's arrangement, the others understood why. Ivan had already been implicated in the 2004 murder of Canadian exchange student Kristen DL. With the money earned by his growing drug rackets, the case would never reach a trial, but the very next year, he was arrested under suspicion of drug trafficking. When he asked for warmer clothes during his winter incarceration, the guards demanded 5 times the bribe his father would usually offer. Soon after, Ivan was bundled comfortably while the headstrong guards were found in pieces outside Mexico International Airport. He was finally sentenced to 5 years in 2008 for money laundering, but demanded an appeal and won. He was a free man again by 2009, wreaking havoc with his brother against the Beltran Leyvas in La Paz. Following Ishmael Zambada's tyrannical claim to Baja California Sur after El Chapo's brief arrest in 2014, whatever alliance that remained between the groups splintered apart, and now Lopez Nunez Los Damasos, Los Chapitos, Zambada's Los Mayitos, and El Guano's faction fought mercilessly over each of their rackets in La Paz and beyond. If you haven't already, I suggest watching our video about La China for a more personal insight into this conflict. Hundreds of civilian lives were lost. Militaries were called to intervene. The Sinaloa cartel lost complete operational cohesion, while each high-ranking member fought for the right to rule in El Chapo's place. After El Chapo's second escape, one of the failed seizures triggered a seismic response by his brother, El Guano, after his son, Aureliano Guzman Arrojo, was taken by the military instead in October of 2015. Using a combination of public intimidation and his vast selection of pocketed law enforcement officials, his son was released just a few months later. When police again tried to arrest one of his men in late September 2016, he coordinated an attack on the Red Cross convoy set to transfer him to the U.S. The armored vehicles were greeted by 60 men armed with military-grade weaponry. 5 soldiers were killed and 10 were injured before the remaining men surrendered their prisoner. But the bloodshed was only beginning. The fragmented Guzman family refused to relinquish their birthright to anyone. 2016 saw Los Chapitos directly competing with Los Damasos for control of La Paz after La China was arrested in September of the previous year for ruthlessly carrying out their own personal vendetta. In a desperate bid for exposure, figurehead Damaso Lopez Nunez began speaking with journalist Javier Valdez Cárdenas to cover the dissolution of the Sinaloa cartel in hopes that his information might weaken the other faction's secretive operations. Lopez Nunez, however, was too close to El Chapo. His death would hold unspeakable consequences for them, but Valdez Cárdenas, he was certainly a disposable asset. Following months of intimidation, including a previous attempt on his life when a grenade was thrown into his office, Valdez Cárdenas was shot 12 times and killed by unidentified gunmen in Culiacán, Sinaloa on May 15, 2017. This came not 2 weeks after Damaso was arrested by Mexican authorities. The The hit was believed to be ordered by Los Chapitos as a message to Lopez Nunez. Rats are not welcome in the family, no matter how they have helped it flourish. The next couple of years saw the remaining three factions riddle regions of Mexico with bullets and blood. A continued power clutch that cared not for the messages written in innocent blood. The Mexican army continued to combat the threats, but were actively overwhelmed with a series of ambushes and roadblocks all around Sinaloa. El Chapo's bleeding cartel, while still embittered in an internal feud, turned the state of Sinaloa into a stronghold for their fragmented operations. But what should have been a damning blow to the dying beast only proved that there was still a reckoning force hiding beneath all of the corpses. On October 17, 2019, a raid was carried out on one of the known compounds of Ovidio Guzman Loera, and the man was arrested before a hail of bullets held the convoy in place. Dozens were killed on either side, and the infighting continued for hours. The violence spread all throughout the state. Looting and assault ran rampant as the entire region fell into a state of anarchy, ushering a response, a decisive action from Sinaloa's mayor. He demanded that the army release the co-head of Los Chapitos before any more bloodshed occurred. This was a testament to the power and brutality of this new wave of narco juniors, now holding the reins of Sinaloa. While Ishmael Zambada and El Guano still held some influence, their age was catching up to them, and their sons were forging their own paths within the organization. Zambada's own son confessed to working with both his father and El Chapo to move metric tons of product into the U.S. in May 2019 and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. El Guano's son, Aureliano Guzman Arrojo, resolved to follow in his father's footsteps, however. Even defend his honor when an informant threatened the solitude his father so enjoyed. On December 10th, 2021, a month after a military detachment arrested 5 of El Guano's most notorious bodyguards, who were all positioned within the army itself, Aureliano Jr. El Guanito entered a popular Mexican nightclub and held everyone hostage with his gang after firing a volley of bullets into the ceiling. He interrogated a known informant for any information he could get, details of the betrayal, before leaving the establishment. He was stopped outside by Mexican police, but realizing they were vastly outnumbered by his group, they let him leave in the 5-vehicle convoy. A chase was initiated, but none of the men were ever caught. For an organization purportedly in its death throes, Sinaloa was able to throw immense pressure onto the public with its overwhelming firepower. When Ovidio Guzman Loera was arrested again on January 5, 2023, Sinaloa was again thrust into chaos. Planes were shot at and downed. Roadblocks made of flame-kissed vehicles lined roads in and out of the Mexican state. 30 innocent lives were lost on the first day alone. Nearly 4,000 soldiers were detached to quell the unrest. Many lost their lives, including a colonel and every member of his 4-vehicle escort who were ambushed on the highway. The anarchy continued for nearly 2 weeks before order was reestablished. El Chapo's 3 other sons remain at large, as well as his brother and nephew. They all have bounties on them equal to millions of dollars. And while authorities from Mexico and the U.S. search for them, the entire country holds their breath for fear of what response may come from another capture. Every citizen lives with the knowledge that at any moment, they could pay the ultimate price for it, that their blood may line the streets in demand of Sinaloa's continued dominion. Thank you for joining me here at The Curious Clam. I hope you enjoyed this video. I put a lot of work into researching these stories and hope you learned something new while you were here. If you want to help me grow so I can keep bringing you more videos just like this, please leave a like and subscribe so you stay up to date on every release. See you around.